Hey guys, it's Mike again with another episode of Creepypasta Text to Speech. Still don't fucking know why he named it, but like before, let's roll with it. Not that I give a rat's ass about it since it's my last appearance. But before I begin, I'd like to introduce two of my friends, Gabrielle and Shandi. Say hello, you both.
Hello everyone, this is Gabrielle.
What's up everyone, it's Shandi, and yes, I am a male robot with a female name, so shut the hell up about it. But yeah, I and these two had decided to do this episode together and see what Harold had set up for us at this time, so let's see. It looks like we had gotten 3 stories to do. Jesus, Harold's good at making sure everyone gets their chance, that's for fucking damn sure. For real? 'Cause I thought I'd be doing some angry German kid bullshitry today. But it's nice to have something to do rather than be fucked up by Leopold Slick.
I mean, it does sound like a good change of pace than being beat by some angry kid from Germany, though I'm not so sure if that would be the case anytime soon.
True, but yeah, the creepypastas we have here today is Fallout New Vegas, The Door, sonic.exe, and Blood, The Nightmare. Real nice choices there, Harold, but to be fair, I was wondering what kinds of fuckery Harold had in store for us. Plus, I was also wondering if I was gonna see what kind of shitpasta this had gotten. And you know what they say. Let the show begin. I'm a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, much like everyone else. I like the newer games, but I don't mind playing the classics. I don't think I've ever played glitchy or hacked games before, though I don't think I want to play any after the experience I had. It started on a nice summer afternoon. I was playing Sonic Unleashed. I liked how you get to explore the towns in it, until I noticed, out of my peripheral vision, that the mailman had arrived and put something in my mailbox, as usual, and left. I paused my game to go see what I got in the mail. The only thing in the mailbox was a CD case for computers and a note. I took it inside. I looked at the note first and realized it was from my dear friend Kyle, let's just call him that, whom I hadn't heard from in 2 weeks. I know that, because I recognized his handwriting, though what was weird is how it looked. It looked badly written and scratchy and somewhat difficult to read, as if Kyle was having a hard time writing it down and did it in a hurry. This is what he wrote. Tom. I can't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this thing somehow before it was too late, and I was hoping you'd do it for me. I can't do it, he's after me, and if you don't destroy this CD, he'll come after you too. He's too fast for me. Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you too. It's too late for me. Destroy the disc, and you'll destroy him, but do it quick, otherwise he'll catch you. Don't even play the game, it's what he wants, just destroy it. Please. Kyle. Well, that was certainly weird. Even though Kyle is my best friend and I haven't seen him in 2 weeks, I didn't do what he asked me. I didn't think that a simple gaming disc would do anything bad to him. After all, it's just a game, right? Boy, was I wrong about that. Anyway, I looked at the disc and it looks like any ordinary computer CD or disc, except it had black marker on it written sonic.exe, and it was much like Kyle's handwriting, meaning that he must have gotten it from someone else, like a pawn shop or eBay. When I saw Sonic on the writing of the CD, I was actually excited and wanted to play it, since I'm a big Sonic fan. I went up to my room and turned on my computer and put the disc in and installed the game. When the title screen popped up, I noticed that it was the first Sonic game. I was like, awesome. Because like I said earlier, I liked the classics. The first thing I noticed that was out of place was When I pressed start, theirs was a split second, when I saw the title image turned into something much different, something that I now consider horrifying, before cutting to black. I remember what the image looked like in that split second before the game cut to black. The sky had darkened, the title emblem was rusted and ruined, the Sega 1991 was now instead Sega 666, and the water had turned red, like blood, except it looked hyper-realistic. But the freakiest thing that was in that split-second frame was Sonic. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding with two glowing red dots staring right at me, and his smile had stretched wider up to the edge of his face. I was rather disturbed about that image when I saw it, though I figured that it was just a glitch and forgot about it. After it cut to black it stayed like that, for about 10 seconds or so. And then another weird thing happened, the save file select from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 popped up, and I was like WTF? What's this doing in the first Sonic game, anyway? Then I noticed something off. The background was the dark cloudy sky of the Bad Stardust Speedway level from Sonic CD, and there were only 3 save files. The music was that creepy Caverns of Winter music from Earthbound, only it was extended and seemed to have been in reverse. And the image for the save file, where you see a preview of the level you're on, is just red static for all 3 files. What freaked me out more was the character select. It showed only Tails, Knuckles, and to my surprise, Dr. Robotnik. Now I was sure that something was up. I mean, how can you play as Robotnik in a classic Sonic game, for crying out loud? That's when I realized that this wasn't a glitchy game, it was a hacked game. Yeah, it definitely looked hacked, it was really creepy, but as a smart gamer, I wasn't scared, or at least I tried not to be. I told myself that it was just a hacked game and there's nothing wrong with that. Anyways, shaking off the creeped out feeling, I picked file 1 and chose Tails, and when I selected and got started, the game froze for about 5 seconds and I heard a creepy pixelated laugh that sounded an awful lot like that Kefka guy from Final Fantasy before cutting to black. The screen stayed black for about 10 seconds or more, then it showed the typical level title thing, except the simplistic shapes were different shades of red and the text showed only Hill, Act 1. The screen faded in and the level title vanished, revealing Tails in the Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1. The music was different, though. It sounded like a peaceful melody in reverse. Anyway, I started playing and had Tails start running like you would in any of the classic Sonic games. What was odd was that, as Tails was running along the level, there was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for 5 minutes. That was when the peaceful music started to lower down into slow deep tones very slowly, as I kept going. I suddenly saw something and I stopped to see what it was. It was one of the small animals lying dead on the ground bleeding. That was when the music started to slow down. Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face that I never saw him have before, so I had him move along, and he kept that worried look on his face. As he kept moving, I saw more dead animals, as Tails moved past them looking more and more worried. As the music lowers and he moves past more dead animals, I was shocked to see how they all died. They looked like somebody killed them in rather gruesome ways. A squirrel was hanged on a tree with what appeared to be his entrails hanging out. A bunny had all 4 of his limbs torn off and a duck had his eyes gouged out and his throat slit. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw this massacre, and apparently so did Tails. After a few more seconds there were no more animals and the music seemed to have stopped. I still kept Tails to continue. After a minute passed, after the music stopped, Tails was running up a hill and then he stopped. It wasn't until I saw why. Sonic was there on the other side of the screen with his back against Tails with his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic, but then his smile faltered, obviously noticing that Sonic wasn't responding to him, if not acting, as if he was totally oblivious of Tails' presence. Tails walked slowly toward Sonic, and I noticed that I wasn't even moving my keyboard to make him move, so this had to have been a cutscene. Suddenly I began to have a growing feel of dread. As Tails walked closer to Sonic to get his attention, I felt that Tails was in danger and something bad was going to happen. I heard faint static growing louder, as Tails was but inches away from Sonic and stopped and stuck his hand out to touch him. That foreboding feeling in my gut was growing stronger and I felt the urge to tell Tails to get away from Sonic, as the static grew louder. Suddenly in a split second I saw Sonic's eyes open and they were black with those red glowing dots, just like that title image. Thought there wasn't a smile. When that happened the screen turned black and the static sound was off. It stayed black for about 7 seconds and then white text appeared forming a message, saying, "Hello. Do you want to play with me?" At this point I was creeped out. I didn't want to continue with the game, but my curiosity got the better of me when I was taken to a different level with the level title now saying hide and seek. This time I was in the Angel Island level from Sonic 3 and it looked like everything was on fire. Tails looked as though he was scared out of his wits this time. He actually looked at me and made frantic gestures to me, as if he wanted to get out of the area he was in as fast as possible. I was starting to get freaked out by this. I mean, Tails was actually breaking the fourth wall, trying to tell me to get him out of there. So I pressed down on the arrow key as hard as I could and made him run as fast as he could, a pixelated version of that creepy theme, When You Meet Shadow at the Ark as Robotnik from Satu was playing, as I made Tails trek through the desolate forest, trying to help him escape from whatever he was trying to run from. Suddenly I heard that creepy laugh again, that awful Kafka laugh, right after 10 seconds have passed, as I helped Tails run through the forest, and then I started seeing flashes of Sonic popping everywhere on the screen, again with those black and red eyes. The music changed to that suspenseful drowning jingle, as I see Sonic behind Tails slowly gaining up on him flying. Sonic wasn't running, he was actually flying. The flying pose his sprite was making looked very similar to Metal Sonic's flying pose in Sonic CD, except it was just Sonic and he had the black and red eyes again, only this time he had the most deranged looking grin on his face. He looked as though he was enjoying the torment he was giving the poor little fox, as he gained up on him. Suddenly when Tails tripped, another cutscene, the music stopped and Sonic vanished. Tails laid there and started crying for 15 seconds. The scene was rather upsetting to watch and I kind of teared up myself. But then Sonic appeared right in front of Tails and Tails looked up in horror. Blood started to come down those blackened eyes of Sonic's, as a grin slowly grew from his face, as he looked down at the horrified fox. I could do nothing but watch. Just in a split second Sonic lunged at Tails right, before the screen went black. There was a loud screeching noise that only lasted 5 seconds. The text returned only this time it said "You're too slow, want to try again?" and then that god-awful laugh came with it. I was so shocked by what had happened. Did Sonic murder Tails? No, he couldn't have. He and Tails are supposed to be best friends, right? Why did Sonic do that to him? I shook the shock off, as I was brought back to the character select. The save file that had Tails was different. Tails was no longer in the box itself but in the TV screen itself, which was flickering with that red static. Tails' expression scared me. His eyes were black and bleeding, his orange fur had gone black and he had an expression of anguish on his face. Trying to ignore it, I picked Knuckles next. The laugh came again and the screen cut to black again and stayed there for another 10 seconds. This time the level said "You can't run." I was really freaked out by now. I couldn't really tell if this was a glitch, or a hack, or some kind of sick twisted joke, or anything really. But despite my fear of what happened next, I kept playing. The next level looked much different. It had the ground of the scrap brain zone, but the sky background looked like the main menu. It had the dark reddish cloudy sky. But it was the music that creeped me out the most. It sounded like Jigga's theme right after you beat Pokey in Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked afraid just like Tails did, though not as much, more rather he looked a little unnerved. He broke the fourth wall just like Tails and looked as if he wasn't sure about going on, but I made him move anyway. He ran down the straight pathway in this dark level, and as he did the screen started to flicker red static a couple times and then that maddening laugh came again. Then after a few seconds of running I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic ground. I felt a growing sense of fear again, thinking something horrible is going to happen to Knuckles. He looked nauseated walking down this blood-stained road, but I still kept him going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him with those black and red eyes, and then red static appeared again. When the static vanished showing nothing but black screen with text saying found in DU, I was now scared. Sonic found Knuckles already? What was going on? Anyway, red static came again and then I was back to the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking, and Sonic was nowhere to be found. And this time that high-pitched squealing from the Silent Hill 1's final boss was playing. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? I hoped to God it wasn't, honestly. Suddenly Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles in what appeared to be pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn and then punched Sonic, but Sonic vanished in black pixelated smoke. Before I could even land a hit, that terrible laugh went off again. Then Sonic appeared behind Knuckles again and then I made him punch again, and Sonic vanished again laughing. Knuckles was panicking even more, and even I felt like I was going crazy. Sonic was practically playing with us. He was playing a sick twisted little mind game with me and Knuckles. Another cutscene played, as Knuckles fell to his knees and clutched his head sobbing. I felt his agony. Sonic was actually driving us both crazy. And then in a split second Sonic lunged at Knuckles and the screen went black with another distorted screeching noise that lasted for at least 3 seconds. Another text message appeared, so many souls to play with, so little time, would you agree? What the hell? Just what is going on? I started to think Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game. But I was too scared to think that. I was brought back to the main menu and this time the second file box had Knuckles in the TV screen. His red fur had darkened to a reddish gray, his dreadlocks were dripping with blood and his eyes were black and bleeding too, and he had a look of sadness on his face. I began to think that those are the actual characters trapped in those TV screens on the save files, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. So I shut off the game and took a break. I took a nap, wish I hadn't, cause I then began to have the most disturbing nightmare. I was in pitch black darkness, though I was under the light given off by a lamp that hung high above my head. I could hear the cries of Knuckles and Tails nearby. They were saying stuff like, "Help us," and "Why did you give us to him?" and "Run away, before he gets you too." Their cries died out, as I then heard Sonic laugh. His laugh, it sounded a lot like the distorted Kafka laugh. "You're a lot fun to play with, kid, just like your friend Kyle, though he didn't last long." I was scared and looking around for the source of the voice. "Won't be long now, until you join him and all my other friends." I saw him walking toward me, flickering in and out in several directions. "You can't run, kid. You're in my world now. Just like the others." When he grabbed me and I saw his bleeding black and red-eyed, grinning face, I woke up with a fright. After a couple of hours I decided to continue playing the game. I don't know why, but I had to know. I had to figure out why this was happening. So I turned on the computer, turned on the game and selected Robotnik next. I still thought that was wacky. playing as Robotnik, but anyway the level title appeared again and this time it said, which I found really freaky. This time I was in some kind of hallway, didn't really look like it was from any of the classic Sonic games, though it has the pixelated style. The floor was shiny and checkered, the walls were dark grayish purple with animated candlelights and a few dark blood stains here and there was a dark red curtain hanging above on the top part of the screen. Every 12 seconds or so that red curtain sways very slowly, but whenever you're playing the game you can barely see it move. The music was oddly pleasant, a piano playing a rather sad yet peaceful song, but I knew better. This was the song that played in Hill Act 1, only it wasn't in reverse. Robotnik didn't look entirely nervous like Tails and Knuckles did, but he did have a suspicious look on his face, as if he was just a bit paranoid. He did a little animation. When I just left him standing, he turns his head to the left and then to the right at least twice and then shrugs at me, as if he has no idea where he was or what was going on. Even though I was scared out of my mind about what was going to happen, I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his usual running animation, you know, when you've beaten him at the end of a classic Sonic game and you chase him, as we continued going through the hallway. Then I stopped at a long flight of stairs leading downward. Now I was nervous, even Robotnik seemed unsure of himself, though I pressed onward. As I led Robotnik down the stairs, I noticed that the walls have gotten darker and more reddish, the red torches are now nearly blue. Then we landed onto another hallway, this one was longer than the last one, or at least it felt like it, and then we headed down another flight of stairs down, this one was much longer, took at least 1 full minute. And then I heard that horrid Kefka laugh again and then the music slowly faded, until it was quiet. As it did the walls turned more dark red and the torches were a black flame now. When Robotnik landed onto the third hallway, I noticed he now looked really creeped out, though he tried to hide it. I couldn't blame him, I was scared too. Suddenly, Sonic popped right in front of Robotnik the same way he did Knuckles and then red static. The red static lasted for about 15 seconds and then it showed me a most unpleasant image. The image showed a hyper-realistic of Sonic standing in the darkness, where you can only see his face, while his head and torso faded into black, and when I say hyper-realistic, I mean like he looked so real you could actually see the lines in his blue fur, as if you could actually feel the fur if you touched the screen. His face ... oh god, he had the most horrifying smile I had ever seen. And that's saying something considering I saw that image at the start of the game. His eyes are wide and black and once again crying blood, which also looked hyper-realistic, and there were 2 small glowing red dots in those black eyes staring right at me, as if staring into my mind. His grin was wide and demonic, it literally stretched to the sides of his face like a Cheshire cat, except Sonic had fangs, very sharp fangs, much like the werehog's teeth except more vicious looking, somewhat yellowish, and from the look of it, he had stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and fangs, as if he ate some animal. I stared at that gruesome image for a good 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off it. I felt as if he was actually looking at me, smiling at me. That face, it just took 10 seconds for it to etch itself into my brain for good. Then the screen flickered with red static again 3 times, and on the 3rd time I heard the Kefka laugh, except this time it sounded distorted, demonic even. It went back to the image again, except this time there was the text again, though it was messed up, but it was pretty much one of the most horrifying things I looked at since I had this game. I am God. It was, when I read that message, while looking at Sonic when it hit me, I realized right there and then. This Sonic was a monster, a pure evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster, and all of his victims, including Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik and possibly Kyle, are just his little toys, and the game is the very gateway into his chaotic, nightmarish world and the very hell his victims are trapped in. Suddenly, in an actual split second, I screamed as Sonic lunged at the screen, screeching loudly with his mouth wide open to an unnatural length, revealing nothing but a literally spiraling abyss of pure darkness, before the red static came again, this time much louder and distorted, so loud that it hurt my ears. I yelled and grabbed my ears as the red static screeched for a good 7 seconds. Then it stopped and showed nothing but black screen. As I sat there staring at the black screen, one last text came up. Ready for round 2, Tom? The Kefka laugh, now sounding more clear, as if Sonic was right behind me, played again 3 times, as I looked at that text in shock and confusion. Then I got booted back to the main menu, and this time the third save file had a TV image of Robotnik in the same, tormented state, as Tails and Knuckles. Robotnik's skin turned a dull gray, his mustache drooped and had blackened, his glasses broke and blood is coming from them, and he had a mere dead-like expression on his face. I looked at Tails, Knuckles and Robotnik and I cried a bit. I pitied them for the agony they were going through. They were forever trapped within the game, forever tormented by that horrid hedgehog, and always will be. Then the computer shut itself off. I couldn't turn it back on no matter what I did. I sat there for maybe 25 seconds, horrified by what had just happened. Sonic is the very embodiment of evil. He tortures people who play his game in more ways than one, and then, when he gets bored, he drags you into the game, literally drags you to hell, where he can play with you always, as his toy. I can't get the game out of my computer. I think it's stuck in there, but at least I managed to turn it back on now. After I sat there for 25 seconds, I heard a voice right behind me, like a whisper. Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom. I turned around to see where the voice came from, and what I saw made me scream. Sitting on my bed, staring right at me, was a Sonic plushie, smiling with bloodstains under its eyes. Now, normally I was quite active in the Fallout, New Vegas community. I had been interested in Fallout modding since I first got Fallout 3 for my computer. At the time, I was quite new to modding of any kind. The most experience I had was creating stupid little Doom 2 mods and making sprites in MS Paint. I look back on those days and laugh sometimes, after how far I've come. But I went too far with my latest mod. I had quite enjoyed reading creepypastas, and I wanted to make something reminiscent of that for Fallout, New Vegas. I spent several weeks adding on new ideas to the mod, learning many things as I went on, and finally the mod was finished. I uploaded it to a modding website I am a regular to, and a few days later I checked on it. My account was banned, and there was no message from the admin. I was angered by this. I spent weeks working on that only to be banned. I needed to find an explanation. I talked to a friend on the site who had downloaded it. I asked him to email it to me. He said that he hadn't played the mod yet, and he asked me why I wanted my own file. I told him that I needed to check to make sure it wasn't tampered with, because I was banned and needed to see if there was something wrong with the mod. He sent it to me, and already I could tell there was something off about it. The file size was much bigger than the one I uploaded to the server. I tried to open it up in the Jack modding tool, but an error message popped up saying that multiple master files were detected and the tool wouldn't load it. I checked the file's masters and it was only the Fallout NV as a master file that contained the unmodified game's data. Even though the variable for loading multiple master files was enabled in the Jack's configuration settings, it would not load the mod. After this, I decided the only way I'd figure out what was going on in my mod was to play it with the game, so I could explain to the admins what happened and hopefully get my account back. The title screen came up normally, but the music was absent. I remember tampering with the game's music files earlier, so it was quite possible I forgot to put everything back where it belonged. I often make silly mistakes like that. When I went to load my save file, the error message that normally notifies you that a previously loaded mod that the save depends on isn't present appeared. This was normal, because the save I loaded was rather old, nothing wrong there. I loaded the save anyway, interested to see what was going on. I was in Freeside near the north gate. The NPCs which normally walk around were just standing there, as if their AI had been disabled. They seemed to carry looks of intense misery, as if they had seen a loved one die right before them. I especially don't remember doing this. The creepy stuff I added was supposed to remain confined to the areas I created. They wouldn't speak to me either. Attempting to interact with an NPC would only cause a brief zoom to their face before going back to the game. Normally, this is what the game does when the dialogue info wasn't detected. I continued to explore Freeside, and eventually found a Freeside Thug, which was a normally hostile NPC. This one wasn't hostile. I ran up to talk to him, and he looked at me. You set these events in motion. We are all suffering because of what you created, the Freeside Thug said. There was no voice to it. I simply read the subtitle. It was at that point, my attitude turned from mere amusement and interest to concern. This wasn't a matter of just my modding mistakes. After seeing this, I decided to stop messing around and get to the areas I added in my mod. The idea was I added a door standing straight up out of the ground, and behind it was a paranormal adventure. When I fast traveled to the 188 trading post, where the door was located at, and the game immediately crashed to desktop. There wasn't anything too unusual about that. The game tends to get unstable when so many mods are run at once. Instead of fast traveling to it, I decided to directly teleport to the area using console commands. My allies didn't teleport with me, which was strange. I found a note on the ground beside the radio container that I added. I opened the Pip-Boy and read the note. We did this together, but I don't need you anymore. Marcus was the name of the antagonist I added for the mod. He was supposed to be a dead serial killer who intercepted the souls of dead people and brings them to a torture realm he created. I continued to the bridge of desks. The desk bridge part was normal for the most part, but the skybox was changed. Instead of the orangey tan color, it was now a dark gray color. As I got to the other side, I entered the door near the boxcar and it took me to the next area. There were no walls in this area, only stairs. The area was completely different than what I had originally made there. I climbed the stairs. They seemed to go on, but eventually I reached the top. The enemy I added that was meant to be placed in this area was standing at the top next to another door. She didn't attack me, so I attempted to interact with her. A dialogue screen came up, and without a voice, the subtitle read "I wish I was dead." The only dialogue options were rumors and goodbye. Rumors was a dialogue option common to the Elder Scrolls games. It was odd to see it in Fallout and I selected it. The subtitle from her speech read "You created Marcus. The pain never ends. I hate you." I selected the goodbye option, and suddenly my character's head disappeared. There was a noticeable bloody stump where his neck was, as if he had been decapitated by normal means in-game. However, my character wasn't dead and I could still move on. Whatever had been done to this mod was beyond everything I did with it. I was concerned about this strange occurrence, but it was interesting nonetheless. I continued through to the next door, where the area with lost souls and the ghost of the Fallout 3 player character fighting were supposed to be, but what I saw was disgusting. My weapons had disappeared and my head returned to normal. I appeared to be a basement of some kind. There were skinned corpses, rotting body parts, and a blood-covered operating table in the center of the room. The walls were stained with what appeared to be blood, vomit, urine, and feces. I saw naked, filthy, and emaciated NPCs crawling around through the piled rotting mess, eating rotting flesh from the corpses, and I saw several NPCs molesting a dismembered torso. A subtitle popped up, "My God. This place stinks with decay, please don't let them see me. I don't want to die this way." There were no other NPCs in the room besides the insane basement dwellers. The only explanation I could come up with was that my player character, normally very stoic in nature and who doesn't seem to be fazed by anything in the game, said this in fear. My character was in no way a stealth character, and the door behind me was now inaccessible. I was actually frightened at this point. The only exit was a large hole in the wall across the room that appeared to be previously boarded up. There was no way I could sneak past those lunatics, and the only thing that was going through my mind at this point was, why the hell are these people here and what is this basement? I tried to disable collision so I could get past them by going through the walls, but I wasn't able to get through the walls. I realized there was only one way I could get through this. I opened the console and enabled God mode, just in case I get caught. I took a deep breath and proceeded down the stairs to the basement. The scene was just as horrible as when I first looked. As soon as I entered the basement, I stepped in a puddle of blood. There was a splash sound effect, and my heart jumped. The heads of all the psychotic filthy NPCs turned to my character, and they all began sniffing the air in an animalistic sort of way, as if they were blind. When I saw their faces, my stomach turned. Their faces were cut up, their lips appeared to be bitten off, they had large scars on their heads, as if they had parts of their brains removed, and their eyes were pure white. Immediately one of them stood up and pointed towards my character, screaming violently. The NPCs charged my character and began to maul him. The game went into a first-person view and he was lying on the floor, as the NPCs pulled his limbs off and began to feast on him. Blood splattered the screen and my character's vision faded, as I watched in horror at the disgusting NPCs pulling chunks out of his torso and eating them. The camera then zoomed out, and I could see the NPCs begin to rape my character's mutilated torso. I wanted to vomit, and I couldn't believe they managed to kill me even with God mode on. I still had to get through this, regardless of if I get my account unbanned or not. Something was incredibly wrong here. When I reloaded the game, I appeared in a different area. The load screen had showed a message that said they were my pets. When faced with an inevitable doom, they reverted to animal instincts that to me sounded like the game was referring to those people in the basement. The game finished loading, and the next area appeared to be the place where the Lost Souls and Fallout 3 player ghost should be, but it was completely empty. There weren't even any clutter items in the room. After what I had just seen, it was a relief to be out of that place. After investigating the room, and finding nothing, I continued through the door to the next area. This area was supposed to be where you fight the first form of Marcus, the antagonist. The bunker room loaded up like normal, and I had my weapons back, so I was slightly more at ease. After I went down the stairs, I saw one of the characters from the main game, Benny, standing alone in the empty bunker. I ran up and went to talk to him, but as soon as I pressed the interact key, he disintegrated and formed an ash pile on the floor. I searched the ash pile, and he had another note. I read the note, and it said as a pawn in all this, "Does your master even care for your safety? Maybe it is time to move on, child." This note was especially unnerving, as it seemed to be addressing my character, while directly referring to me, as his master. After reading the note, I noticed that it was noticeably more difficult to control my character. The mouse sensitivity was extremely low, I could barely look around, and my character would only run in short 3-step bursts before stopping briefly. In the next area, there were supposed to be two deathclaws to fight. But instead they were on the ground dead. When my character came near them, text popped up. Is it all worth fighting for? These messages seemingly coming from my character were perplexing to me. As I started walking towards the door to the next area, an image flashed across the screen for half a second. In the brief glance that I had, it appeared to be a handgun. I entered the next room where the giant Deathclaw boss was supposed to be, and I found myself in a dilapidated bathroom. The tiles on the walls were falling off, the floor had holes in it and dry blood stains, the stall doors had come off, and the sinks were smashed. There was nothing else in the room besides a wooden chair. I walked closer to the chair, and I kept seeing brief flashes of Marcus sitting in the chair. When I got in arm's distance with the chair, there he was. Tell me, child, now that you're here, why bother following your master's orders? The same entity that forced you to murder people for his amusement. I may be a murderer, but I think you'll find I've been quite honest so far. The text said. Without me pressing any keys, my character brandished a handgun exactly like the one I briefly saw in the image. I failed everyone. But if this world revolves around my actions, the greatest deed I can do is and make all of it. After the text disappeared, my character put the gun to Marcus' head, and shot him. And if I need to live so this madness can continue, there's only one way to put a stop to it. The text said, as my character raised the gun up to his own head and shot himself. After my character died, the screen faded to black. Suddenly the screen began to show rapidly flashing pixelated glitching, and there was a painfully loud low-quality soundbite of Warp screaming. I was wearing my headphones at the time, and the scream was so intense it gave me a bloody nose. After that, the game crashed to desktop. I noticed that the plugin was gone, leaving only my copy of the original mod I backed up. I was sick to my stomach and frightened at this point. Suddenly the printer began to start printing something. I didn't want to look at it at first, but it was a note. I just wanted to get it out of the way, and I read it. Dear Master, you could have never known what you were creating in the game would cause suffering, and for that I do not blame you. My final decision was not one of hatred for you. I was doing what was right. I killed myself so that his influence over the world would end, to purge the world of his evil. Goodbye, and please, be careful from now on. The imagination is a deadly thing. The Courier. A few days later, I worked up the courage to go back to the site to report my findings. Eventually, I even managed to get my account back. Once I did, the mod was still there and I was very nervous when I saw it, but I checked the file section. I was relieved to see that it was now the unmodified version. Whatever happened, whatever I did fixed it. I still don't know what caused this to happen, but every once in a while, I see Marcus' masked face in my dreams. The mod is still up there today, for archival purposes.
Have you guys heard of the game? Blood? No, don't answer that, I'm sure you haven't. Don't get me wrong, the game does exist, it's just considered abandonware. Here's a little history lesson for you. When 3D Realms was celebrating their success for Duke Nukem 3D, they began two projects right after. One was called Shadow Warrior, while the other was called Blood. The game was set to be released in 1996 right after most of the expansion packs for Duke, but this was a ploy to continue its long line of success in their company by releasing different series using modified versions of the build engine. This modified version was to enable the use of more sprites, while using more voxels in one screen at one time. Nearing its completion, Monolith Games bought Blood of 3D Realms and completed it shortly after. It was released in June 20, 1997, however, it was overshadowed by id Software. Blood had to compete with Quake 2 and Hexen 2, which used a more advanced engine at the time. Because of this, Blood was easily overlooked. Monolith released an expansion pack known as Plasma, while 3D Realms released the second expansion pack known as Cryptic Passage. These didn't help and ultimately the game was forgotten and lost. I'm dead serious, the source code for Blood was never released to the public, thus modding the game itself is considered impossible. I remember my father playing Duke Nukem 3D often, while I was growing up. I used to watch him blow through hordes of enemies using unique weapons and listening to the hilarious dialogue Duke was known for. At the time, I was 8, so most of my memory is rather fuzzy, yet the Blood was something I remember most. This isn't a nostalgia trip, in fact, my father insisted that I never watch him. He said the game was too violent and gory, and he said it might give me nightmares, so I had never really seen the gameplay. That's all I can remember. Sitting in my apartment, I finished my homework and decided it was time to relax for a bit, so I listened to music, as I looked through countless WODs for Doom. Having Doom on Steam, I wanted to find one that would be fun to play. But then, I came across a link for Blood, which is here. The game itself is fun and addicting to play, and after seeing how I can get it for free, I decided to jump on it and give it a shot. No viruses, no malware, nothing. It is a complete rip of the game and works just fine. Look into the link and give a shot yourself, if you wish. Though you may be asking, how is this creepy at all? I know this may sound like a cliché or misuse of Blood, but this game is exactly what the title says it is. There is a lot of blood, and sometimes, it is very exaggerated. It is something for you to take a look at and see for yourself, otherwise this story would just sound like the kind of experience most bad creepy stories will often tell. After several months of playing Blood and beating it over and over again, I looked into the history of the game and wondered why this isn't really known to people. How can this forgotten relic be unknown to gamers all around? Duke was an amazing game and this world top 3D Realms charts. In fact, I believe that Blood would have dethroned the king from his chair, if it had been known. After hours of research and reading what little I could find on the game itself, it was time to call it a day. I left my computer on overnight so that the virus scan could do its thing, while I slept. The next day, I noticed Chrome was up and minimized. It was on a site that I don't remember visiting that previous night. It was a wiki page with a link on it. However, the wiki didn't have any other information on it, except for Blood, as a header and the link. At first, I was reluctant to click on it and had passed it off as a disconnection from my IP. So I closed the window, trying not to think about it, only hoping that I could forget about it. During class, that link was on my mind. I couldn't for the life of me get it out of my head. I knew, if I had clicked on it, something weird or retarded might have happened, but curiosity got the better of me, and I went to my history, finding and opening the page with the link. I did what anyone would do, I clicked the link, which only refreshed the page and populated it with information about Blood and another link containing a modified version of the game. Red flags flew into my mind. The source code was never released, so how can a mod exist? I closed the window, saying fuck it. About 5 minutes later, my computer detected a virus and I freaked out a bit. It took some time to clear up the mess that the link had given me, but I was able to contain it. However, on my desktop was a .raw folder with the modded version of Blood. Somehow it had downloaded and self-installed to the game folder in my C drive. I sat there, staring at the folder, the game, and thinking about how this could have happened. I scanned the .raw folder to see if this was just another virus, but it came back negative. With a sigh, I decided to try it after all. It was there and apparently there to stay. The mod was called Blood, the Nightmare, and its readm said that it contained 7 new levels and 1 hidden exit, with the message, "Try to find me." Try to find me, what does it mean by that? I thought to myself. Once I started the game, I found myself in an office building. The level was rather well done and was difficult, too. I shotgunned my way through hordes of enemies, blowing them apart with TNT, all the while trying to survive that onslaught. As hard as it was a very good mod. Well, I can't exactly say it was a mod, since it was more like an expansion with new levels, for the game didn't really add anything new. At least, that's what I had thought. I finally finished Nightmare with some trouble, but I never did find that secret exit. So again, I played to look for it, checking all corners and crates, looking at all desks and walls, searching for anything that looked off or discolored and could possibly indicate that there might be a secret behind it. On the 5th level, behind a bookshelf, there was a door that led to a secret which held the exit marker. After completing the stage, it took some time for the game to load. When it finally did, I was thrust into a muddy, unfinished level filled with garbage and gargled pixels and voxels. It was difficult to tell if I was falling, standing still, or moving. The only indicator I had was my weapon moving side to side when I walked. How the stage was made, it looked as if I wasn't even progressing in the first place. After a few minutes of what I think was walking, I heard welcome before suddenly dying. 1 hit, 1 kill, and I don't even know what hit me. I started again and made it to the same stage once more, only to once again hear welcome and die in the same manner as before. This happened 3 more times before DOSBox crashed due to low memory. I started the game again, deciding to skip the secret altogether, but the title screen changed. It kinda took me off guard and caused me to stare at my computer screen in confusion. The gargoyle that sits in front of the title with blood beneath it now was animated. It looked the same, but now it only said Nightmare. All of the options were working and a new episode had been added. Though a bit uncreative, it just said Blood as the name of the episode. I started in the same room, as you usually do in episode 1, level 1, but this time, the walls showed pictures of real violence, not just still but also animated ones. If you shot or stabbed the wall, some blood would squirt out, or if you just waited long enough, you would see it anyway. There was a child who was beaten to death, a man cutting his own fingers off with a knife, some pictures of cannibalism, and it only grew worse the more I progressed. The monsters acted normally, but said nothing when they activated. Not only that, but they moved much faster. On top of that, there was only one difficulty and it was set on hard. Needless to say, this was relentless to get through. I died, and when I respawned, I noticed that the monsters I had managed to kill stayed dead. However, I also saw my own dead body, and every time I died and came back, I could see where I had last died. The further I went, the harder it was, and soon enough, my dead bodies littered everywhere on the levels. Eventually, DOSBox crashed once again due to low memory. I stopped for a while, thinking to myself about this. I wasn't scared, but genuinely creeped out and disgusted. However, I wanted to see the ending of this so-called mod, so once again, I booted the game up. This time, the gargoyle was absent from the title screen, and a new option came up, continue. I spawned in the same room, as you do, when you start episode 1, level 1 again, and I saw that there were textures back to normal. When I jumped out of the grave, I noticed my body laying in front of me. All of the secret items were missing, along with all of the weapons. All I had was the pitchfork. I found more of my bodies laying on the ground, more and more and more littering the entire area. The monsters that were there were now completely static and turning their view away from me. Even when I circled them, they kept looking the opposite direction. They could be killed but just wouldn't attack me. When I reached the end of the stage, there were countless bodies of myself. The game didn't let me go to the next level, instead I lost control of my character. It turned around and I watched the player character try to defend himself and try to get away from himself. The other character said nothing at all, but stabbed me as much as it could while I was attempting to run away. I heard my character wheezing and breathing hard, as if genuine fear took over. I watched as more of the bodies rose and walked slowly towards my location, like how some of the monsters would normally do when they were trying to get to you, but with much smarter way. I watched as the hero struggled and tried to get away. I couldn't see what weapons they were using because of how old the game was, but I did notice that they were damaging my character. I watched as his health slowly drained until he died. I still wasn't in control, nor could I respawn. I just saw the camera point upward and look into the hundreds of NPCs that looked like my character. Then they all turned in one direction, as if they were looking at something. The final boss of the game walked up and stood in front of me, swinging his arm. The screen flashed red and spurts of gore flew upwards. I shut the game down and took a deep breath, having a cigarette to calm me down. I went back to the wiki site that had the link, but surprise, surprise, the site did not exist anymore. I used to think that scary stories of supposedly haunted games were just make-believe. But now that I have had something happen to me that I can't exactly explain, it's hard to think what's real and what's not anymore. After my smoke I rebooted Blood again. Nightmare wasn't there. In fact, the .raw folder and everything inside of it was missing, all except for one text file which read, "You still didn't find me." I deleted the message and the folder. I wasn't gonna look. It was not worth my sanity. I will still play the original game but not that, not again. Seriously, Mike, I know you had read sonic.exe and sort of enjoyed it, but holy shit, was that story bad? And was that an its sequel made by J.C. the Hyena, as in the drunk madman J.C. the Hyena?
Yep, and for all I cared it was just cliché-filled. What with the unnecessary violence, the hyper-realistic blood, Tom being cocky in a stupid ignorant way. And the fact that JC just made an evil Sonic recolor with no real lore behind it. I'm not surprised that his former so took it from him, and remade him to be not affiliated with him and this story. I mean, I'd rather summon and keep a fucking Lugia as a pet, than keep a plushie that has black and red bleeding eyes. I am kind of with Mike here. I mean, despite what I would say about Blood, the Nightmare, at least it did keep to its namesake of being a rather bloody and gory game. And also being fair. The fact that the story I read was about a Fallout New Vegas mod that had been somehow modified to make everyone suddenly miserable because of the antagonist of the mod the dude made. Although, has anyone aside from myself kept a Pokemon as a pet, regardless of it being common, a pseudo-legendary, legendary or a mythical? Well, aside from maybe a Banary and a, oh what's it called? Chansey is it?
Aside from a Charmeleon and a Chatot, no. Why do you ask, Mike?
Mainly due to the fact that I was kind of considering getting one, maybe two, as pets. Maybe a Charizard and a Dragonite or something along those lines? But let's just get this over with. This has been Microsoft Mike, Shandi and Gabrielle signing off. See you guys when we get another guest appearance. Yeah, this has been a bit interesting. See you guys later.
Well, goodbye everyone.